Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday, November 11th, 2025 edition of Douglas Now Live. I'm Robert Preston Jr., live here on the DouglasNow.com Facebook page. And of course, this will be uploaded to our other social media platforms as well once we are done. Before we get to our top stories for the day, it is Veterans Day. And I would like to take a moment here to thank our veterans for their service to our country, to the freedoms that we all enjoy. And when I think about where we are as a nation, I think about the division that we are experienced and have experienced for some time. The one thing that unites us all, the one thing that we can all stand together with a spirit of unity, is when we recognize those who have served and those who have fought to protect our freedoms. Right now, as we are doing this, there are Veterans Day programs going on at schools around our community. Our veterans organizations, our schools, our school systems, CCA, our other organizations do a very good job of preserving the respect and the heritage of service that Coffee County has through Veterans Day programs. And even at an early age, elementary school age, our children learn about the sacrifices that our veterans have made for us. And what it always comes down to me, what I always think about, again, no matter how divided we are, the fact that we can be on opposing sides of issues, the fact that we don't necessarily have to agree, that we can express our opinions, whether they are popular or unpopular, comes back to the freedoms that we have. And we have these freedoms because people were willing to fight and people were willing to die in order to preserve those freedoms. And we owe our veterans a debt of gratitude that we can never repay. And the Veterans Day observance is but a small token. We do it once a year. We should do it more. And I hope it is on our hearts and minds throughout the year, the sacrifices that they made. But we do take time here on November the 11th. And actually, it's the 11th hour on the 11th day of the 11th month of the year where we pause to honor those who have served. And it's something we should never forget. It's something we should never take for granted. And it's something that we should never ignore. And it's something that we should never stop doing. So again, to our veterans, thank you very much for the sacrifices that you made for us to preserve our freedom so that we can live in the greatest country in the world. To your families, to your children, to your friends, to your spouses, they made sacrifices as well so that you could serve us. And we would like to thank them as well for being a part of that. Again, we pause very briefly, one day a year to honor our veterans, but it's much, much more than that. And the significance of Veterans Day and the significance of the sacrifices that veterans have made, not lost on us. And I hope it's something that we never take for granted again. Thank you very much for your service. We appreciate what you have done. And we will continue to honor and remember and recognize those sacrifices. We have a couple of stories to go over today. Who would have thought that a municipal election, no major state races, we don't have a governor's race on the ballot, we don't have a presidential race on the ballot, nothing major, just a couple of public service commission elections along with our municipal elections. Who would have thought that a week later we would still be talking about the election still? Have a picture here of Nichols Mayor Tamon Frost. Yesterday, a hand count or a hand audit was done on the election results from last Tuesday. And the election with involving the Nichols mayor is one of the big reasons why. 159 votes for the incumbent Mayor Frost, 158 votes for challenger Ronnie Birch. Now, and we talked a little bit about this on Friday, the fact that an election was so close does not mean that anything bad happened. It doesn't mean that there was any type of fraud or nefarious activity. But when an election is that close, it does warrant a little more attention than normal. The election board met on Friday and decided to do a hand audit on the election results. Now, an audit is very similar to a recount. For all practical purposes, they accomplish the same thing, but there are some differences, some procedural differences between an audit and a hand count. The reason the elections board wanted to do an audit instead of a recount was because you can still certify the election and get that taken care of in a timely manner if it's an audit. If it's a recount, you cannot certify the election until the recount is over with. Now, even though there was one vote difference in that election, it did not automatically facilitate a recount. Now, if a candidate had requested a recount, then the elections board would have conducted one, but there was never a formal request made for a recount. So the election board decided to do an audit where, again, they go through all the numbers, all the results, make sure everything is as it should be, and but they could go ahead and certify the election, which they did on Friday afternoon. So yesterday, the audit was done. There were no changes in the vote count, and election officials told me throughout the week last week that they were very confident in the election night results, that they felt like they were accurate. They felt like that every vote that had been cast had been counted and been counted accurately and appropriately. And the audit yesterday showed that. So at the moment, and I'm going to explain what at the moment means, Mayor Frost has won a second term. Now, as is the case with every election, you hear all kinds of stories about people voting who shouldn't have voted and people voting in a community in which they don't live or at a wrong address or things like that. Those same allegations have been made, or some of those same allegations have been made in this election. Now, an audit or a recount would not identify problems like that. That's one thing that people don't really understand sometimes, and it can get confusing. All the recounts do, all that the audits do, is take a look at the votes that were cast. Do the ballots that were cast on the machines get counted and get counted accurately and appropriately? Now, it doesn't take into account that maybe someone voted who shouldn't have voted. Someone voted who was not eligible to vote in that election. All right. That's not what a recount or an audit will find. In order to have something like that investigated, candidates or citizens must file formal charges. So, for example, let's say someone cast a ballot in Nichols for the Nichols mayor's election who does not live in Nichols. All right, maybe they used to live in Nichols, they moved, they live in Broxton or Ambrose or Alma or somewhere like that, and they didn't change their address right, or they did change it, but it didn't get changed on the voter rolls, so they're still, according to the voter rolls, eligible to vote in Nichols, and they do. All right, so even if they live in another county or another city and they voted, the audit or the recount is not going to show that. If a candidate knows of a circumstance like that happening, then the candidate or another citizen would have to go through a different legal process to file a formal challenge on that voter. And then the election board would hear it and then make a determination as to whether or not the voter was eligible or not. All right. So there's always a possibility that something like that could happen. But as of right now, and the county offices are closed today because it's Veterans Day, I do not know of anything like that. Okay. There are rumors and innuendo and discussions and, what may or may not happen and challenges that may or may not take place. None of that has happened yet. All right. If it does, we will let you know. But once again, the audit would not show anything like that. There's a separate process that addresses that. So the election has been certified, and as things now stand, Mayor Frost has won a second term by a scant one vote margin, 159 to 158. The underlying message, of course, in all of this is your vote counts. Your one single vote counts. And I wonder how many people are in Nichols who decided not to go vote because they didn't think it mattered, or it would take too long, or, I forgot to go vote after I got off from work and I got home and started messing with the kids and supper, and I just didn't feel like going back out. Vote could make a difference. It really could. And we've seen it every several years, situation pops up where one vote does in fact make a difference, and one or two could have changed the election up in Nichols on Tuesday. But right now, it appears that Mayor Frost has won a second term, again, by a scant one vote margin. If there are any developments or any challenges otherwise, we will let you know. Related to election news, this has sort of flown under the radar. Maybe it has, because in the grand scheme of things, it's largely symbolic. But we have Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis here in the middle of this photo, courtesy of the Georgia Recorder. On Friday, President Donald Trump issued issued pardons for all of those defendants who were charged in the Fulton County election interference case. Now, when I say it's symbolic, because it doesn't really affect anything, it doesn't really mean anything with regard to that case. Now, if you have followed it, what happened, it was 18 or 19 people were charged with various charges related to allegations of election interference in the 2020 presidential election. Fani Willis, Fulton County District Attorney, brought those charges up. She is here in the middle. She has since been disqualified from that case for alleged misconduct with someone who also worked on that case. She had an improper relationship with someone on that case. And so she has been removed. Now, the case is not dead. It is still active and ongoing. They have a deadline in which to appoint a new prosecutor for that case. The deadline is Friday. If there is not a new prosecutor appointed, then the case does, in fact, go away. But that is that remains to be seen. According to official statements, they being the officials in Fulton County, are still trying to figure out if they can find a prosecutor. I think this, I believe, is Nathan Wade. That might be the individual with whom she allegedly had an improper relationship with. But once again, she's been removed. The search for a prosecutor continues, and there are not but a few prosecutors in the state who would be qualified to handle a case like that. And out of that pool, you would have to also find one who is willing to do so, because it's a pretty high stakes case. It is very much a high profile case, but it's also one that is very risky. And I have said this all along, and I will continue to say this: if it did go forward, it would be very difficult to prove, I believe, for a number of reasons. Now, going back to the presidential pardon, which again does include two individuals from Coffee County, Misty Hampton and Kathy Latham. They were among those who were pardoned. The president cannot really do anything with state charges, right? So his pardon is largely symbolic and doesn't affect the case against those two or the others who are named, all right? The president can pardon folks with federal charges, but he can't pardon anyone with state charges. This is why he did not pardon himself in the case against him, the criminal case against him in New York, all right? Because that was a state case. So theoretically, I don't think this has ever been done before, but a president could pardon himself if he were charged with a federal crime, but not if he's charged with a state crime. So it is largely symbolic, but it's still kind of interesting to think that two people from Coffee County or with connections to Coffee County have received a presidential pardon if it is only a symbolic one. And it also brings this case back to the forefront once again. We haven't heard much from it in a while, but it is active and ongoing if, in fact, there is a prosecutor appointed. And today's Tuesday, so we've got 3 days. If a prosecutor is not appointed by Friday, then the case does, in fact, die on the vine, and it will go nowhere. But hadn't been a lot put out there about the presidential pardon. Again, probably because in the grand scheme of things and on the practical side of things, it does not mean a whole lot. It's just an interesting footnote to this story. Want to mention the region realignments. This is a sports or sports-related story. The Georgia High School Association yesterday put schools, the GHSA's member schools, in their new regions for 2006, 2026, 2027, and 2028. If you followed this story in the last week or so, the GHSA has announced which schools would be in which classifications, changing the classification process from a 6 classification system to a 7 classification system. All right, so we're going back to 7A, to 1A through 7A. Coffee has been playing in 5A the last couple of years under the 6A classification system. We're playing in the next to the highest classification. When we've moved to 7A, we are now a 6A program, so we're still playing in the second highest classification. So it's a different name, but for all practical purposes, it's the same thing. Coffee's not really going anywhere, not really moving up, not really moving down, staying in the second highest classification in Georgia. We will be in region, as of yesterday, we will be in region 2 6A. We're in region 2 5A now. So same thing. Our region opponents remain the same with the addition of Tift County. And this was kind of interesting, and I had thought this would probably happen. Tift County has been playing in the highest classification, but they got moved down under the new system. So they're dropping from, if they had remained in the highest classification, they would be 7A. So they're dropping down to the next highest. So they will be in our region, and that made sense. And I was hoping that that's what they would do, that the GHSA would put Tift County in our region. First of all, it guarantees us another close game when we have to travel. Tifton is not a bad road trip. All right. So we don't have to travel very far. It's also a pretty good rivalry between Coffee and Tift. It might be the second most ferocious rival outside of Coffee Ware. Coffee Ware will always be number one, regardless of classification. But Coffee Tift can get pretty ferocious as well. So we are back in the same region with a school nearby, and one that we have a history with, that we have a very good rivalry with. So it's going to be a lot of fun having Tift County in the region. It also gives us 7 teams in the region instead of 6. And those teams are, of course, you've got Tift County now, but you still have Northside Warner Robins, Veterans, Houston County, Lee, and Thomas County Central. So when you put Coffee in there, that's 7 teams in that region. So it's basically the same region that we're in, basically the same classification with the addition of Tift County. So the next couple of years are going to be a lot of fun. They do this every 3 years or so. The other interesting change is that under the current system, the top 4 teams in each region make the playoffs in a given sport. Now, the lower classifications have used a power ranking type system the last few years that looks at several different factors and does not necessarily give or guarantee the top 4 teams make the playoffs. You could have fewer than 4. You could have more than 4, depending upon the rankings and all the various factors that go into that. So in addition to having Tift County come in to there being some shakeup in the classifications and the region realignments, we're now going to be using this this power ranking schedule to determine, or power ranking system to determine the postseason. And I like it. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to change things up. In some ways, it will be a benefit. In other ways, it won't. All right. Weaker teams that have always made the playoffs simply because they were in the top four are not going to have the same luxury. All right. You also could be a higher seed in the region standings and not play at home. You could also be a lower seed and get to play at home, depending upon how you stack up with other schools. So it's going to benefit those teams that play in tougher regions. It's going to be a lot of fun. And it's going to take a little bit of getting used to. And you know, you can really get into the weeds and analyze things to death, it seems. But it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm in favor of it. I knew this was coming. Once they instituted it in the lower classifications, they've been doing it from 3A down for the last couple of years. The private schools, GIA's been using this for a while as well. It went really well, has been going really well in the lower classifications. It also gives a little bit more importance to non-region games, all right? Schools always kind of break the season up into different seasons, if you will, where you have your non-region schedule, your region schedule, and then your playoffs, right? And you'll hear coaches say every year, no matter how good or bad the non-region schedule went, when you start that first region game, well, our records are all 0-0 now. Now we're into the second season, and this is what matters. That won't be the case anymore. The entire season is going to matter all the way from the first game, regardless of sport, where you're talking about football, baseball, basketball, what have you, from the first game all the way through to the last game, region or not. Now, region games are going to count more, but you're not going to be able to completely dismiss that non-region schedule anymore. So things don't change much for Coffee County in terms of our region competition and what classification we're playing in. Still the second highest classification, still playing against the same other 5 teams with the addition of Tift County. Atkinson County will play in Region 2 Single A. Its region opponents will be Baconton, Charlton County, Clinch County, Eccles County. But in football, Eccles will not be playing a varsity football schedule. Irwin County, Lanier County, Mitchell County, and Pelham. So that's what Atkinson County's region will look like next year. So interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun. I wonder what this will do for obviously we're going to lose a non-region game with the addition of another region opponent. And I'm talking about in terms of football here. When we've played several Florida schools in our non-region schedule, I wonder if we will continue to do that, if we will still play those Florida schools. You know, we want to play Ware County. Our non-region schedule has been Bainbridge, Ware County, and then 3 schools out of Florida. So one of those 5 is going to have to go. It probably will not be Ware County. That's a lot of fun for both communities. Don't know if it would be Bainbridge, try to keep those same 3 Florida schools on the schedule, or maybe not play one of those, keep Bainbridge on and add another school from Georgia. It just depends. But there will be some changes to the non-region schedule as well. I want to go to our tower cam. A beautiful day here in Coffee County, albeit a very cold day. All right, we had winter come in yesterday and today. It's going to warm back up through the rest of the week. It's not going to stay this cold throughout the entirety of the week. We're going to have some cool mornings. It's going to get up into the 70s in the afternoons. But right now, it's chilly. It was cold yesterday, and it's colder today. Although you can't tell it on our tower cam. The warm days look just like the cold days do. But we have another beautiful day here in Douglas and Coffee County, although a chilly, crisp day. So those are our top stories for today. Once again, to our veterans, thank you very much for your service. We appreciate it. The few words that I have said here are grossly lacking in what you deserve, all right? They are not nearly enough. They are not nearly significant enough. They are not nearly eloquent enough to fully recognize and show our appreciation for the sacrifices that you have made to serve our community. We are appreciative, and we can never express that gratitude enough to you. But please know that we are appreciative. We do thank you, and we take this day very seriously. It is a day of great significance, and the sacrifices that you have made are very significant. You did it for us. We appreciate it very much. Thank you again for your service. I hope everyone has a wonderful, wonderful Tuesday. Enjoy the sunny day, but stay warm. It's cold out. We'll see you next time.